rose largely renowned for being a physical copy of a mark of love, red for love and passion, white for purity and loyalty, pink for gratitude and sweetness. There are hundreds of different species and hybrids of roses across the world. Famously, the rose of Hildesheim is believed to be the oldest rose in the world, lasting for 1,000 years. A multitude of purposes and rituals is found within the rose's body. They have found their way as candied petals, garnishes on pastries, in cocktails, herbal teas and jams, enhancing food with their fragrance. Historically used for its medicinal and healing properties too, the juice from rose petals used to be applied to sores, or in ancient Mediterranean gynecological writings, decoctions of roses were used in sitz baths. And still to this day, the benefits of rose oil are valued, just to name a few. They are also a popular ingredient in skincare for its antibacterial, anti-inflammatory, and antioxidant properties. Lastly, of course, used for its scent, as seen in perfumes and incense. Roses are great survivors. Fossil records show they existed roughly 35 million years ago. They were first in cultivation in China 5,000 years ago and in the Middle East 2,000 years ago. Rose wreaths have also been unearthed from Egyptian tombs. In 300 BC, a Greek scientist and writer named Theophrastus wrote the very first catalogue of roses. They have continuously interlaced their way into all our lives that will leave stains on us for forever, a residue reaching every crevice of this earth, practices, and our beings. Though aside from its practical benefits, what we find even more fascinating about this single flower is its innate duality, soft petals held up by barbed prickles. We have loved them since we were young, be it in something as trivial as our current social media handles or in the creation of our art seen in our online shop. Vivid memories play in our mind of being sat in art class years ago, the frequency of the exercise in representing a concept or feeling presented by the teacher, students pondering quietly on how to illustrate feelings of grief, anger, love, happiness or dread and the like in one piece. It inspired our own reflection of those times. We wonder what artists would create to illustrate the world, aside from the stereotypical globe. The formation of an answer would come to our minds quite effortlessly on a random Thursday in May of last year, a rose. Roses are a potent symbol of devotion in mythology. Aphrodite would protect the body of Hector using the immortal oil of the rose. The archaic Greek lyric poet Ibycus recites that Aphrodite nursed him amongst the rose blossoms. Though, contrary to its analeptic nature, in one version of a separate tale, Adonis is gored by a wild boar during a hunting trip. When Aphrodite was running after the body of her lover, she cuts her foot on a white rose. It was there that the first red rose arose from her blood. Whilst Adonis passed away in her arms, Aphrodite used his blood drops that fell from his wounds onto the soil, also mixed with her tears. After an hour, a flower sprung up as dark red as the sanguineous liquid. Perhaps this is why the rose became such a famed symbol of love amongst any other flower, for it is the recognition that love is paradoxical in nature, bringing us both happiness and heartache. Grief is just the aftermath of its continual indwelling. That love can never be uprooted from our souls. In the same vein of the act of giving flowers, we give ourselves to love over and over again, for the rewards of love always outweigh the risks. Hence the rose represents the balance between birth and death, love and loss, as psychiatrist and psychoanalyst Carl Jung states. The wholeness, which is a combination of I and you, is a part of a transcendent unity, whose nature can only be grasped in symbols like the rose. Additionally, roses symbolize beauty and rebirth. Flora, the goddess of flowers in Roman mythology, or Chloris in Greek mythology, was walking along the countryside when she stumbled upon a lifeless nymph. Incredibly saddened by it, she would beckon to the other gods to transform the nymph into a rose. Venus/Aphrodite would add the beauty. Bacchus/Dionysus bestowed the intoxicating scent from nectar. and the three graces gave their respective qualities. It would be crowned with a diadem of dewdrops, proclaiming it the queen of flowers. According to Hindu beliefs and ancient literature, the rose played an integral role in creating the world and mankind. In accordance to the tradition, the gods Vishnu and Brahma argued which flower was most beautifully crafted. Vishnu would mention the rose's perfect shape, and in contrast, Brahma sided with the lotus flower, as he had never seen a rose. When shown a rose by Vishnu, Brahma was left speechless by this aforementioned beauty. One last myth we will mention is the existence of a rose's thorns via the hands of Eros, which interestingly is an anagram for rose. One day while leaning in to kiss his most loved thornless rose, Eros was stung by a bee hiding inside the flower. When he relays the moment of shock to his mother Aphrodite, he consequently is gifted a magical quill of arrows to help him get revenge. As Aphrodite did not wish to see her son so upset, Eros returns to the garden firing a plethora of arrows down at the rose bushes below. The thorns are seen as the places where his arrows missed their mark. Just like mythology, our world holds many secrets and mysteries. The Latin phrase sub rosa literally translating to under the rose, demonstrating a veil of secrecy. As sung by the Persian poet Farid-ud-Din Attar, mystery glows in the rosebed, the secret is hidden in the rose. Paintings of roses were done on the ceilings of Roman banquet rooms to serve as a reminder of things set under wine should remain sub rosa. In the Middle Ages, a rose would be suspended from the ceilings of council chambers, pledging all those under it to secrecy. In Christian symbolism, the phrase sub rosa has a pillar of importance within confessions. Pictures of 5-petaled roses were often seen carved into the confessionals, indicating that conversations would remain undisclosed. All humans have a public and private life. Our public lives are the outer petals, the facets of ourselves that are easily seen by others. In the age of social media in particular, it is often the side that is carefully polished and maintained due to social dynamics and cultural constructs. Our private lives are the anatomy of a rose on the inside, the intimate details and self-discovery. It is the space we cultivate our truest selves. So it would seem that even in myth, ancient times and religion, that in times of a crux, the plucking of delicate heartstrings, or even just uninterrupted colloquy between each other, they too had the rose be a centripetal force to the heart, a first resort to either immortalize someone, keep word, or to transmit love. Like us, you were probably thinking, why have humans since ancient times asserted that roses epitomize beauty, even being named the queen of flowers when there are many other flowers in the world? Strictly in the context of symbolism, we believe the answer could reside in its imperfect individuality. In Alice in Wonderland, the Red Queen desires nothing but absolute perfection. She wants hundreds of flawless and identical red roses only in her garden. The 3 gardeners shaped like playing cards, however, would make an error by planting white roses. In an attempt to hide this mistake, they begin to painstakingly paint them red, lest they be in the throes of the Queen's wrath. Painting the roses red presents as a commentary on conformity and the dangers that come with moving away from one's true self. The irony of this tale is that it's roses, a flower that is far from perfect, as touching its stem can produce a teeny pool of red from once undisturbed skin. The Queen seeking perfection from her roses is futile from the very beginning, as no 2 roses are alike, which in turn makes them the most compelling. Arguably, there is hardly any other flower with as many varieties as the rose. With such an array of diversity, their individuality stands out. Roses have been bought and given out for centuries for their alluring fragrance and elegant petals. The thorns are not really at the forefront of our minds. We accept them as a part of the natural structure of the rose's existence and beauty. The rose being considered the queen of flowers is indeed befitting. Their beauty feels human. The rose's anatomy is also very reminiscent of humans, having both masculinity and femininity. The pistil of the flower is made up of the stigma, style, and ovary. representative of the feminine part, whilst the masculine part is the stamen surrounding the pistil. Having read Angela Carter's The Bloody Chamber, we feel this can be best explored in this book, as she would generally attribute the rose to the female heroines. Initially acting as a sign of youthful purity, purity being commonly placed upon a rose, but also not overlooking the flower's sharp stem. The rose is anthropomorphized as the female identity, portraying what is expected of women through superficiality of men's manner towards them, often only being seen as powerless, pretty roses. The women of the book experience objectification and unjust oppression from dominating male power. The anguish that comes with this depicted through the thorns, as told through the story where the Countess character is pricked by a rose and exclaims, "It bites," whilst perhaps The Bloody Chamber more so uses the imagery of thorns to reflect on the tragic components of womanhood. Outside of the perspective of these stories, a rose's thorns also imply a strength, that women will sink their teeth into the world. This evidently serves as a reminder of the dualistic nature of thorns. In stories, they can serve as a representation of pain and adversity, but they also represent resilience and boundaries, as seen in relation to their function in gardens. Roses developed thorns as a natural protective mechanism against herbivores, to deter them from eating the flower due to its intoxicating fragrance, consequently helping to ensure the success of the rose's survival. The terms used to describe a rose's appearance are used interchangeably, but in botanical terms, as mentioned in our introduction, the thorns themselves are not actually thorns, rather they are called prickles, stem protrusions growing from the epidermis. Furthermore, a salient thought to touch on is the awareness of roses in tarot. They appear on 4 major arcana cards: the Fool, the Magician, the Strength, and the Death. All of these cards weave meanings of equilibrium, denoting that our world is very much comprised of balance. As you look at these 4 words, Fool, Magician, Strength, and Death, you could essentially associate these to the journey of life. The Fool is marked as 0 in tarot. We all begin as a fool, you could say, brought into this world inexperienced and unsullied, blissfully innocent and naive, exhibiting a lot of pure excitement, faith, and curiosity for the future. But these feelings of inexperience don't just halt, we carry it with us always through new beginnings and challenging adventures one takes on their paths, always learning as we go. The white rose on this card encourages and symbolises acting from a state of purity. It is the balance of acknowledging our inexperience, yet moving forward freely into the unknown despite. The Fool holds the white rose with an open heart. Then you take the Magician, marked as number 1 in tarot. It is a card of talents, capabilities, and tapping into our full potential. It is the conduit converting our ideas into action. The budding wisdom in the understanding of our desires, the unfolding of our experiences to further hone what we love. The Magician is surrounded by an altar of red roses, representative of human passion needed to cultivate a garden bed of creation and the emergence of ourselves. Then comes the Strength card. Depending on the deck, it is either marked as 8 or 11. It depicts a woman with red roses woven around the abdomen, much like armour, and a rose crown resting on her head while she calmly tames a lion. As we get older, we realise we need this a lot in our lives, to never waver in our own self-belief or inner power, to not be shrouded by any form of temptation to give up. Again, this notion of reoccurring balance, to be equipped with the fiery determination of a lion, but also to hold on to the force of patient and compassionate love. Finally, we have the Death card, marked as number 13, which doesn't need much explanation other than it is the end of something, a transformation to let go. The white rose on the black flag symbolises the eternal return to a new beginning and purification. Just like the white rose in the Fool card, we see how endings are actually always linked to renewal. Overall, having the rose interwoven amongst these 4 cards to enhance the established meanings is fitting to the highest degree. as the rose is the champion flower for our blossoming journey in this world within its strong stem and petalled head self. It would be remiss of us not to end this video exploration on alchemy, as the rose is also an ambivalent symbol in this practice. Alchemical texts were purposefully obscured with the use of symbolism, metaphors, and legends to describe chemical concepts with esoteric ones. Upon researching, it would seem that the alchemists occasionally more so used the symbol of roses for their colour in relation to the major stages of the magnum opus. But it is interesting that out of everything they could have used to describe some of their work, they indeed chose a rose. According to J.E. Serlo, A Dictionary of Symbols, the rose is described as a symbol of completion, of consummate achievement and perfection, with the number of petals in the art also bringing forth interpretations. For instance, the 7-petaled rose alludes to the septenary pattern in humanity, and the 8-petaled rose infers regeneration. Speaking more on the number of petals, as opposed to what our roses look like today, wild roses only possessed 5 petals, mimicking the pentagrammic path traced by the planet Venus, famously known as the Rose of Venus. To us, this further highlights the omnipresent essence of roses, that even the cosmos know of the connection between humans and the flower. In particular, one of the most important texts in European alchemy was called Rosarium Philosophorum, published in 1550. Rosarium, which translates to rose garden, is a compendium of a string of findings from gathering alchemists, equating the sections to blossoms. The context of such texts dealt with the relationship between the archetypal red king and white queen, or also known as the red sun and white moon, leading to the preparation of the stone. The white rose is connected to the stage called albedo, and the red rose connects to the stage called rubedo. Carl Jung saw these stages in alchemy as an allegory for the process of individuation, the journey where an individual realizes a state of spiritual and psychological wholeness, stating that albedo is the elucidation and rubedo is the transformation. The rose begins below the ground with an absence of light, but it is necessary for it to acquire nourishment and purification for it to reach above towards transformative blooming. We tend to our roses with water and ablution so it receives its life. The blood of the rose petals arise and are symbolic of this growth and enlightenment as they form a spiral. The rose's physicality, being a spiral, can be indicative of circular imagery seen in the infinite sphere of Earth. There is no corners. Primarily, the rose in alchemy is a symbol of the marriage of opposites and conjunction. Ultimately, it has amplified the concept we explored earlier in regards to mythology, that it is the mystic core of our hearts. Objects are mercurial in nature. As symbolism is deeply ubiquitous, one can ascribe an abundance of meanings to anything. Looking at the visual literacy of the rose itself, you are able to understand why we believe it is quite a perfect representation of humanity. Delicately fragile yet formidable at its core. Often can be pricked by its prickles, but there is always beauty to be found. This single flower is emblematic of the world itself.